Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a CTO, an engineering director, or an enterprise security leader, you're going to want to lean in and pay close attention today. We are breaking down exactly how the recent discovery of AI-generated 0 days is completely flipping the script on the way you need to make enterprise infrastructure and budget decisions.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at the $100 million wall, decoding the Zint methodology, comparing the Mythos versus Zint findings, diving into the risks of unpatched vulnerabilities, and finally wrapping up with the independent security system imperative. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The $100 million wall. Proprietary AI Security.
$100 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That staggering figure represents the backing behind what Anthropic called Project Glasswing. This was a highly exclusive, heavily restricted program, and they only let a few massive tech giants in as launch partners. Companies like Amazon, Apple, Cisco, and Google. The whole pitch was to find and patch vulnerabilities before the bad guys do, using a general-purpose AI model that autonomously hunts down 0 days.
And they really hyped it up, right? Anthropic essentially told the world that this capability was, quote, way too dangerous to release publicly. The headlines made it sound like this god-tier AI where you just type "find a vulnerability" into a simple prompt and it magically does the work. But when you actually look under the hood at the infrastructure they were running, it relied on something entirely different. Yeah, it wasn't just some magical AI sitting in a vacuum. It was actually a 21-person dedicated red team. These humans were the ones deciding exactly which code bases to target. They were the ones structuring how to run multiple scans in parallel. And honestly, most importantly, you had professional human triagers manually analyzing every single finding to see if it was actually exploitable. So the real crucial takeaway here? Mythos, without this massive human system wrapped around it, is just research. The model found the bugs, sure, but it took a small army of humans to actually make them usable.
Okay, moving to Section 2, decoding the Zint methodology, the independent challenger. Enter Zint. They built a comprehensive, publicly accessible system, and they did it without any special invite. Now, quick side note, right after Anthropic's big announcement, another startup came out and claimed they replicated the findings just by asking an AI if a pre-selected vulnerable function was broken. I mean, come on, that's literally just handing the AI the answer sheet. Zint didn't play that game. They built a real pipeline. They scanned hundreds of files, identified the attack surface, ran keep analysis on candidate code paths, and validated the exploitation. They basically recreated what Anthropic's massive team did, but they used publicly available models to do it. And it is absolutely fascinating to see how this pipeline roots out deep, complex flaws. Take this one, a 17-year-old remote code execution flaw in FreeBSD. Zint's system flagged a function that was trying to cram an RPC header into a 128-byte buffer, but the decode actually allowed for lengths up to 400 bytes. It's a classic, critical bounds-checking failure, just hiding in plain sight for almost 2 decades. And it's brutal because it easily leads to a stack overflow which hands an attacker complete root control over a server running NFS. Using that exact same systematic approach, Zint broke down a 16-year-old vulnerability in FFmpeg. And you know FFmpeg is that massive media processing library used everywhere to encode and decode video. In this case, you've got a 32-bit slice counter shoved into a 16-bit field with absolutely no cap. So, what happens? When it hits the maximum value, it rolls over and collides with a marker used for invalid macro blocks, which instantly crashes the decoder. This isn't superficial scanning. This is deep architectural analysis happening systematically, entirely without relying on a gated proprietary model.
Which brings us to Section 3, Mythos versus Zint findings, a direct comparison.
When you look at this direct comparison, the results really speak for themselves. Zint didn't just casually replicate a few 0 days. They went up against the exact same 4 code bases: FreeBSD, OpenBSD, FFmpeg, and Firecracker. They targeted the exact same subsystems, and guess what? They found every single showcase bug that the $100 million Mythos project found, every single one. But they didn't stop there. They proved their system was an absolute extension of the original work. Look at this. They found 12 additional bugs. 5 more in OpenBSD, 7 more in FFmpeg. We're talking denial of service flaws, cryptography issues, info leaks, the whole shebang. They proved unequivocally that a smart, well-designed independent system running on publicly available open-source models absolutely beats relying solely on a $100 million guarded fortress.
All right, Section 4. Let's talk about the real-world impact here, the risks of unpatched vulnerabilities, or what we call the 99% threat.
Because, honestly, this terrifying metric should be keeping every security leader awake at night. Out of the roughly 1,000 zero days identified by that original Mythos project, a staggering 99% of them are still sitting unpatched right now, just sitting there in critical live software bases that shipping teams rely on. Only 1% have actually been resolved. That is absolutely wild.
And it gets worse when you pair that unpatched reality with what Anthropic's own red team lead said. They claimed, quote, other AI labs are 6 to 18 months behind. Okay, sure, but what about the threat actors? You really have to ask yourself that hard question. The window of exploitation for adversaries is wide open right now, and those 99% of bugs are just waiting to be scooped up by anyone with a decent automated system.
Which brings us perfectly to our final section, the independent security system imperative, budget and infrastructure. Because as an executive leader, you've got a massive decision to make right now. Are you going to wait behind the gate? Are you going to rely on these expensive proprietary safety partnerships that are highly restricted and demand massive budgets? Or are you going to embrace independent automated pipelines that use publicly available models, giving you agile, continuous scanning of your own code bases?
Look, if there is one vital lesson to take from this explainer, it's this. The people trying to break into your systems, they aren't waiting around for an Anthropic API key. Adversaries are actively building their own scanning systems today using open, accessible models. The game has changed. The race we are in right now is system versus system. It is not model versus model. AI has completely democratized zero-day discovery.
So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to take back to your teams. In a world where AI vulnerability scanning is already fully democratized and threat actors are spinning up their own independent pipelines as we speak, is your enterprise security budget really focused on the right defense? Are you investing in the infrastructure to find your flaws first, or are you waiting for an exclusive invite that your attackers frankly don't even need? Think about your systems, think about your code, and it might just be time to rethink your pipeline.